Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to Syriana Analysis. This episode is recorded, it's not live, but I'm publishing it on 9 p.m. Central European Time, and I'm joined with Vanessa Beeley, independent investigative journalist. She's based now in Damascus, and I have received so many requests from you to cover the earthquake. Of course, I was going to cover this case, but we were really, really busy trying to arrange humanitarian assistance to Syria, and it was the priority was to deliver as much as assistance and open eyes for the people on social media accounts for what is happening there and the effects of the sanctions against Syria, especially during this humanitarian catastrophe. Vanessa, you are now in Syria. Could you summarize the general mood? First, I want to know the popular mood in Syria. I know it's a big tragedy, but at the same time, I'm also seeing a lot of people say, yes, we were very disappointed in the past years from our country because of the whatever happened there, and we're really living in dire situation. But we really realize that we love our country, and we're rushing to help other people. There are tens of thousands of people traveling from different governorates to Aleppo, to Jable, to other cities to help the people with their bare hands.
Yeah, I mean, this has been quite extraordinary. It's real Syrians helping real Syrians, and we've seen this throughout the war. To be honest, the economic downturn and the pressure of the sanctions, particularly the Caesar law, has really lowered morale in Syria. And this final tragedy, I mean, when, we all heard about it 4 a.m. A few days ago, an earthquake of 7.8, and the devastation in places like Aleppo, Latakia, Hama, Tartus, Jable, all areas, of course, that have been previously decimated both by war and by sanctions. Because, of course, the sanctions have prohibited the rebuilding and the restoration of many of the areas that were destroyed during the occupation of the terrorists and through the liberation campaigns to cleanse these areas of Western-backed terrorists. But what has been extraordinary has been the mobilization of Syrians to help Syrians. I mean, we've seen here in Damascus dozens of young people calling for groups to bring food, clothing, tents, supplies, any kind of supplies that are necessary, and forming convoys or requisitioning buses to take them to Aleppo or to Latakia or to Hama and to distribute the goods themselves. Some of the associations are doing good work, but for me, the uplifting aspect is to see Syrians who really have nothing themselves finding the resources, pooling resources, and pulling together to help Syrians. And it's just, I mean, you posted earlier about a young guy in Azazir in Aleppo who's established a free hot lentil soup stand, right, for people there. This is Syria. This is why Syria in 11 years has never, ever been overcome by some of the most powerful Western nations. Why? Because it has this solidarity. It has this love for its homeland and for their brothers and sisters. And this is something that the West has always underestimated in Syria, and it will continue to underestimate it. But this is what will enable Syria to survive.
So this is guys a friend from Aleppo. His name is Azad Aslanian, and he says, I know this is a very little help, but as much as I can give to the people, this is a soup, linsen soup, we say, linsen soup. It's warm, and from this restaurant, Pepperoni, please tell each other I'm in this address. Whoever comes, he just gets this. Like, as little as this type of help, it warms your heart, because you see the people, they really want to help. Like I've seen people on social media that in the past few weeks they were writing every day, on the first opportunity I want to leave this country, on the first opportunity I want to leave this country, and now they say I never realized that I am too much attached to this country
Yeah.
because and this catastrophe. I've seen people, as you mentioned, forming convoys from Damascus to Latakia, Jable, Tartus, Hama, Aleppo, and those are individuals. I'm not talking about organizations. I'm talking about
Exactly.
people
Yeah.
posting on Facebook. They say, guys, if you're going to Aleppo, take me with you. I want to come and help. And then people just comment and say, oh, I have a car. Yalla, come. Do you have enough gasoline for it? Yes. Yalla, let's do it. And they're going to Aleppo to
Yeah.
help the people. This is very heartwarming for me. But it's not completely bright picture, and there
No,
are
for
also
sure.
other type of Syrians. I want to say, I want to put it in brackets, and I want to share with you this video. I'm sure you can see it on your laptop now, which is from a guy. He is Syrian, and his name is Omar Al-Shoghri. I'm sure you know him. He appeared in front of okay, Vanessa probably had some technical problem, but she will join us again. So this guy, Omar El-Shoghri, he is a Syrian activist, and he is supported most probably by Qatar. And he even joined UN Security Council sessions in the past since he left, and he's living abroad. And he claims that he was imprisoned in Syria because of his political opinion. And at one time, he says he escaped from the prison, and on other articles, he say he was released. So we don't know which one is accurate, to be honest. Vanessa, no problem. I'm already making some comments on this guy. His name is
Okay.
Omar al-Shoghri, and as I mentioned, he's a Syrian activist, and he claims that he was a political prisoner in Syria. In some articles, he claims that he escaped the jail, and in other articles, he say he was released. So we don't know which one is accurate. But he is most probably supported by Qatar, and he even stood in front of the UN Security Council lecturing other leaders for not giving enough, helping enough, like help, he wants a military intervention in Syria. And now he posted a video yesterday about the humanitarian aid, and he says that the sanctions do not restrict the aid. And I will play it. It's in Arabic, but there are English subtitles. Let's watch it together first.
مفروض على النظام السوري سواء كانت عقوبات قانون قيصر أو عقوبات أخرى ولن تؤثر على دخول المساعدات الإنسانية إلى سوريا. الأزمة الأساسية اللي عم تواجه المعونات هو النظام السوري من خلال الأمم المتحدة من خلال روسيا عم يضغط أنه كل المساعدات تدخل من خلال دمشق. من خلال دمشق يعني النظام السوري رح يمسك كل المساعدات بإيده. النظام السوري اللي قتل أكثر من 1,000,000 شهيد، اللي عذب مئات الآلاف من السوريين وهجر أكثر من نصف الشعب وجوع أهل مضايا وأهل سوريا. هذا نظام غير صالح على أنه يمسك المساعدات بإيده. مع ذلك يضغطوا لحتى يجبروا المجتمع الدولي لحتى يشيل العقوبات. العقوبات ما إلها علاقة بالمعونات، ولكن هو لعبة، والنظام السوري عم يضغط على الشعب السوري لحتى يحصل أمور سياسية واقتصادية وعسكرية. النظام السوري حيستخدم حتى المعونات لحتى يمول آلة القتل والتعذيب.
So basically, he's saying the sanctions imposed on the Syrian regime do not affect the entry of humanitarian aid to the Syrian people inside or outside the regime's control. The Syrian regime is trying to lift the sanctions so that it can finance the killing machine that has claimed the lives of 1 million Syrians, displaced half the people, and is still torturing more than 100,000 detainees. So this is Omar Al-Shoghri. He's very famous. He has over 100,000 followers on 120,000 followers on Instagram, and he is spreading this message in Arabic and also adding English subtitles for his audience. So when you see such people who make such videos, what is the first thing that comes to your mind, really? Sometimes, because I will be banned forever. I will be banned forever if I say what comes in my mind.
I'm not sure I should say it on an interview with you either. Exactly what first comes into my mind. But, I think what people really need to understand is that these people have affiliations to terrorist groups, as you mentioned. He's probably funded by Qatar, as are the White Helmets, who are cynically using this tragedy, this Syrian tragedy, to pump some credibility back into their image and into their promotional material, right? Because they suffered, their entire brand suffered a tremendous blow after they were caught staging the events in the Douma alleged chemical attack, which has been proven by the OPCW inspectors or the dissident inspectors to have been staged. And to have no relation to reality. The OPCW final report is influenced by the Western regimes that are funding the OPCW and controlling the results from the OPCW. So what we are actually seeing here is as I said, a cynical exploitation of this tragedy to increase the funding which had been dwindling to the armed groups and to the white helmets and to the various NGO constellations that are either affiliated to Al-Qaeda or the various armed groups present in Idlib, to increase the funding and humanitarian aid that enters through the Bab al-Hawa crossing, which is controlled by Al-Qaeda and is effectively a trading post for Al-Qaeda, HTS, however you want to rebrand them.
So
right?
what you're saying
So
is the Western countries are sending this humanitarian aid to a gate or through border crossing that is controlled by Al-Qaeda.
Yes.
So currently after the earthquake, they are doing the same.
Yes.
Okay.
Because this is the only area that they are sending so-called, I keep saying so-called humanitarian aid to, because we have no idea of what they're actually putting on the lorries that are coming into Idlib. We don't know what happens to the humanitarian aid. We don't know how it's distributed. We don't know how it's stored. And I would speculate that if we look at the modus operandi of the terrorist groups and the white helmets, what they do is they receive humanitarian aid, they store it, and then they sell it at extortionate prices to Syrian people, to the Syrian civilians. And we have to remember, a huge number of these armed groups are not Syrian, including members of the White Helmets. And the White Helmets have a history of being exclusively embedded with and affiliated to Al-Qaeda. Their leadership has often been also armed group leaders. So they have a direct connection into Al-Qaeda. And what we're seeing is white helmets, both the white helmets increasing their propaganda output, but also Western media picking up the white helmet narratives. I saw an article in The Guardian yesterday where they were talking about the situation in Afrin. Now, the white helmets are not in Afrin, right? And yet, the white helmets are basically being promoted at the end of the Guardian article. Whereas prior to this tragedy, the media had started to back off on the white helmets because they understood that the brand was damaged. So they started to call them the Syria Civil Defense. They started to reduce the limelight for the white helmets. Suddenly we're seeing them pumped up again. And what is kind of upsetting is that I'm seeing a lot of Syrian pages, a lot of Syrian commentators using white helmet footage to effectively convey the tragedy that is happening to Syria and to Syrians. The white helmets are not friends of Syria's. They are the enemies of Syria, and they work with the enemies of Syria to destroy Syria. Of course, now they are isolated in the northwestern pocket of Idlib, which is still under the control of the US-UK asset, which is Al-Qaeda.
To be honest, I've seen the photos of white helmets on lots of Facebook pages of my friends, and I think lots of people are posting it with goodwill, but the white helmets isn't injecting and publishing all these photos and materials for with a goodwill. They're publishing this in order to repolish their reputation, which was tarnished recently, and they're the ones who are saving the people in Idlib in their own videos and in their narratives. So they're gaining more popularity among the people. This is in my humble opinion. But as you mentioned, the Guardian also published an article. They're bashing quote unquote the Syrian regime again. And they say Syria accused of playing politics with aid in aftermath of earthquake. Syria was accused of playing politics with aid after the Syrian ambassador to the UN, Bassam Sabah, said his country should be responsible for the delivery of all aid into Syria, including those areas not under Syrian government control. The dispute over the control of the aid, along with the weather, destroyed roads, and closed crossing points, is hampering aid efforts into northern Syria, which is held by rebel groups. They don't mention here the sanctions at all. The UN humanitarian agency said many roads were blocked as a result of damage and snow, adding that before the disaster, as many as 4 million people were dependent on aid from across the border. UNICEF, the UN Children Agency, said it feared thousands of children had been killed on both sides of the Syria-Turkey border by the earthquake. So the question here is, if this aid is going to border crossings that the West is sending, which is controlled by Al-Qaeda, why aren't they dividing the aid? Because 90% of Syrians live in government-held areas, right? How can it be that you send to an area which is controlled by Al-Qaeda and expect, they're sending, okay, I'm just going to give you some numbers for the people to understand. There was a crowdfunding online. They didn't tell the people who sent them donations that they're going to send all this money only to the rebel held areas. They didn't say that. They didn't mention it in the description. But the people were asking a lot in the comments, and the head of the campaign came and he said, "Oh no, this is only for the rebel held area," and that means less than 10% of the Syrian people who are affected. And I'm thankful because, okay, 2 million euros going there just by this campaign, but the rest of the people, who are 90% of the people affected, they're not getting anything. The same thing, the Western countries, they're sending only to the areas under the rebel, I'm always like, put it between brackets, guy, the rebel control, but not to the government head. Okay, divide them. Send the half to the government. If you have all this trust for Al-Qaeda, I mean, in any sense, there is no one has two functioning brain cells in his head who would think that the Syrian government is worse than Al-Qaeda, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it? It's like Syria has actually been reduced down to Idlib. The rest of Syria doesn't exist, right? And it doesn't exist when you look at the flights that are bringing in humanitarian aid to Turkey, for example. And then you look at the flight paths over Syria and there's nothing, absolutely nothing. I mean, that should demonstrate alone the isolation of Syria during this tragedy. But also I would ask the question, okay, there's 2 million coming into Idlib, which is Syria, in the perception of most of the Western populations, right? Because that's how it's being presented to them. And even Western governments are saying, no, we are supplying humanitarian aid to Syria, but what they don't say is that, no, but we're only supplying it to Idlib, which is under control of our asset, which is Al-Qaeda, right? And what I would like to ask, for example, the White Helmets throughout the war, since their establishment, which was in 2013, they've been receiving heavy earth-moving equipment, bulldozers, caterpillars. I mean, they have, if you go to one of their YouTube video sites, you will see there's an actual site describing all the equipment they've received, right, for 7, 8, 9, 10 years almost. Why isn't that equipment, if the White Helmets are impartial and neutral and care about the Syrian people, why isn't that equipment being deployed to, for example, Aleppo city, and being used there where people are still dying under the rubble? And now with freezing temperatures, there's going to be a hard freeze tonight. There was snow all day today in Aleppo. The chances of survival for these people who are being dug out by bare hands by the real Syrian emergency services, whose ability to respond to a disaster like this is inhibited by the fact that for 11 years they've been under sanctions. They can't renew their equipment. They don't have sophisticated modern bulldozers and equipment to clear rubble fast, right? So if the White Helmets really, really care about the Syrian people, why are they not offering assistance? You know, instead, what do we see? We see constant photo opportunities
Yes.
in
Photo
Idlib,
ops,
which
yes.
has been terribly hit by the earthquake. I'm not saying that, and of course there is a Syrian population in Idlib. But my question is, what's happening to that aid, Kevork? Because we've seen this throughout the history of this war, that this aid does not reach the people when it's controlled by the terrorist groups and by NGOs like the White Helmets that are controlled by NATO member states and their other sponsors in the Gulf states. Right.
Guys, this is a video for the Russian rescue team in Aleppo, and they are actively participating underground. Something, of course, you're not gonna see on your on your TV outlets. And this is the Syrian Red Cross, and so those are the people working underground through rescue. I would show you also. The Armenia actually sent today a rescue team to Syria, which is, I'm thankful for that. This is the Armenian rescue team. They arrived also today. I hope they are still alive, people under the rubble that can be saved, which is until this moment there are people coming alive under the rubble, especially the younger people. There is something I also want to mention, which is very important. People are asking. This is extremely important. I don't know where this come from. Netanyahu says Syria requests quake relief, Israel ready to send, and there are so-called experts and journalists, even in Moscow, I don't want to name him, and he claims that this is 100% accurate, and he has his own sources. I can assure you with great confidence that this is not only fake news, this is beyond fake news. This never happened, and Netanyahu is presenting himself as the white pigeon in this situation, like someone who wants to help his neighbor, whereas we know what who is Netanyahu, this wolf. I will share with you guys an article today was published in a German newspaper, and they say Christian churches are calling for lifting the sanctions. So this is in German, but now translated by Google Translation. Christian churches call for end of EU sanctions against Syria. So I will make a little bit maybe closer. Okay, let's make it green. Okay. After the devastating earthquake in Syria and Turkey, the General Secretary of the Beirut-based Middle East Council of Churches, Michel Abbas, calls for the immediate lifting of EU sanctions against Syria. The economist and sociologist who belongs to the Greek Orthodox Church of Antioch told the Berliner Zeitung, the Berlin newspaper, for years the sanctions have hit the population hard and not the ruling groups. Because of the sanctions, the earthquake aid is not arriving in Syria either, because we cannot transfer funds from Lebanon to Syria. People suffer from poverty, hunger, and disease. It is inhumane that we cannot help the people. The Middle East Council of Churches comprises about 30 churches and church communities, including Catholics, Orthodox, Eastern churches, and Protestants. It represents all churches in the Middle East and is associated with all major Christian churches in Europe and North America, among others. So this is coming from more than 30 different churches in the Middle East. Some of them are in Lebanon, some of them in Syria, and they're all calling on the EU to lift the sanctions. But what is the position on the EU in this regard, Vanessa? Complete denial, right?
The complete denial. I mean, at least 2 EU countries I found out today, and actually Germany is one of them. They are supplying funds to the Red Crescent in Damascus. There are some funds coming into the Red Crescent. But other than that, no, we know that aid has been blocked to, as you said, the 90% of the population that are living under the Syrian government protection. And what was I going to say? There was also a headline in the New York Times, which first of all talked about the fact that sanctions are not arriving to the majority of Syria. And then the headline was almost rapidly changed to, it's because the Syrian government is preventing humanitarian aid coming in cross-border through Turkey to Syria, right? So someone got their knuckles rapped for actually pointing out what is preventing particularly Western alliance aid coming into Syria. But I think what's interesting, Kivork, I was talking with the ambassador for Venezuela in Damascus earlier tonight. There's a plane also arriving from Venezuela with a rescue team of 20, and of course, tons of aid and humanitarian relief. Sorry, the internet is really bad here in the last few days also.
It's good. I can hear you very well.
All right. And, what we were talking about is the fact that as great a tragedy as this is, and, all of us have been feeling heartbroken since the earthquake hit, what it's doing is it's revealing beyond question the pure evil of the EU, the UK, and the US and their allies, which include countries like Australia. Greece, apparently, I was reading earlier, has basically flat out said that it's not going to supply any aid to Syria. It's revealing the inhumanity of these regimes without question. There can be no question. This is a tragedy. It's a human tragedy. And what we're seeing are the non-aligned axis responding. So we're seeing Iran, Algeria, Hezbollah, Lebanon, Egypt, as you said, Armenia, Venezuela, UAE. We're seeing countries defying the Caesar law because, of course, the Caesar law can be weaponized against these countries and sanctions can be imposed on these countries for even daring to come to the assistance of Syria. But I don't see how the West is going to get away with imposing sanctions for that reason, because they're already exposed as inhumane regimes. And for all their protestations that they are supplying humanitarian aid, they're not. They're lying. On top of, their inhumanity, they are lying. So it's difficult to know. I mean, after various events like COVID, like the Ukraine war, they've been exposed. And even previously in Syria, of course, they were exposed. But now with this, I mean, it's just unbelievable how they're doubling down on inhumane measures against the people. They are unilateral sanctions that collectively punish the Syrian people. They don't affect the named individuals or the named organizations that the sanctions claim to be targeting. That's a lie. That's another lie. Sanctions are never used except as a weapon against the people to turn them against the respective governments.
Yes. Guys, this is the statement of the Prime Minister of Greece, Kyriakos Mitsotakis. He says EU cannot help Syria after earthquake due to sanctions. And I want to mention two things here. I received a phone call today from a friend. He is a good journalist, and he encouraged me to contact mainstream media outlets and ask them for appearance, especially in the West. And he encouraged me to do something about the Western politicians and their policy towards Syria. And I said, look, I live here in Germany, and in my firsthand experience is we are not dealing with normal human beings. We are dealing with people who truly, truly, truly are evil deep inside. And even if 24 million Syrians are perished from cold, hunger, all sorts of pandemics or whatever hit Syria, they don't care. This is when you convince yourself that these people do not care about the Syrians, these politicians, you start seeing things in a completely different perspective and you act accordingly. And I said, no, this is not going to change anything. I'm sorry. Fuck the mainstream media and fuck the politicians. What I'm doing is on Twitter and on YouTube and elsewhere, when I'm trying to collect crowdfundings or trying to raise awareness, is more important than talking to politicians or mainstream media. Because you go to mainstream media, they give you 5 minutes chance to speak. 4 minutes of them is interruptions. They're like, it's like they don't even let you say thank you for hosting me. And he's like, so what you're saying is like, we know all these techniques. I'm not not new to this. I'm not going to play their game. I'm not going to play with their rules. If they want to come to my show, أهلا وسهلا, we say in Arabic. أهلا وسهلا. Come. Welcome, Habibi. Welcome, Habibi. Let's talk 1 hour about this case. I give you all the platform to speak, and I have the right also to respond. Nobody interrupts anyone. But I'm not going to play your game. And also for the politicians, is there anyone who thinks these politicians do not know what's happening in Syria? They have their assets.
Exactly.
They have their assets in Syria. They collect information. They have the data, and they have their intelligence personnel. Guys, do not forget, Syria, after all this war, there's so many countries sent their agents to Syria, and it's an open border for them. They are spying, and they know what's happening in Syria. And this is the goal. This is what they wanted to happen. I don't understand. Why would I talk to a politician that he or she wanted for Syria to be like this? Because these people, when they imposed the sanctions, this was the end goal in their mind, to crush the morale of the people, to crush the livelihood of the people, so that the people rise against the government and replace the government with another government that they support. I mean, it's not a rocket science. So this is what's happening. What would I say to a politician that he and she wants this to happen to Syria? It's completely insanity. I'm not going to talk to them. I'm not going to interact with them. These people know what they are doing in Syria. So we have to act accordingly, and we have to collect all these individual efforts into one basket, finding a platform on social media outlets in order to bring all these individual efforts into like collective effort and try to help. And I'm seeing lots of people collecting funds, raising money just like by hand, like giving, I come and give you €100, and people are buying tickets to Lebanon now from Germany, and I know people, they're going to Syria next week, and they're collecting now money
the same
by
from
hand.
Canada, No, the same from Canada, from all countries where Syrians have settled, particularly during the war. But I think also even within Syria, I'm seeing dozens of posts of people offering empty houses, empty apartments to the refugees, to the people who've been displaced, whose homes have collapsed again. Also we need to remember how many times have the people from Aleppo been homeless.
Yes.
I mean, during the war, when their houses were occupied by the terrorist groups that are now in Idlib receiving the humanitarian funds. Then during the liberation campaigns, many of them had their homes destroyed and were living in the shells of those homes. The terrorists dug the tunnels under their homes that have now collapsed in the earthquake because, of course, their foundations were insecure because of the terrorists tunneling under them, right? So how many times have these people been displaced? And here they are displaced again. And the people who have caused their displacement are the ones now receiving the so-called humanitarian funds from the West, while the West is depriving these people of any assistance or any help. And that's what they've done throughout the 11 years. This is nothing new. But now what we're seeing is a natural tragedy, an absolute humanitarian devastation. And yet the West, and it's not the fault of anyone, right? But the West is still refusing to supply humanitarian aid or equipment or tents or any form of help or assistance to these people. And as you said, it's because that's what they want. If 24 million people, Syrian people died tomorrow, they would be relieved.
Yes.
Now they can take over the country. Now they can keep all the resources. Now, effectively, they have control of Eurasia, which is why Syria is so important to them, because it's the gateway to Eurasia for them. They don't want Russia or any other country to have even a percentage of control in Syria. So it's not about humanitarian issues. It never is about humanitarian issues. If it were about humanitarian issues, why are they blockading 23 million Yemenis and not allowing medical equipment and medicines in? The same in Iran. Why are they championing women's rights causes when in Iran they've imposed sanctions that have retarded the development of women's rights in Iran?
Yes.
You know, this is the thing. It's total and utter hypocrisy from the West at every single turn. Everything that comes out of their mouths is either a lie or is hypocrisy.
Yeah. To be honest, I always gave the benefit of a doubt and interacted with people who are part of this establishment, whether they're journalists or they're politicians. I completely and utterly lost my respect for them. I do not want to interact with them. I do not want to give them any legitimacy by even interacting with them in any case related to Syria. I think Syrians now, after this earthquake, should know who is their friend and who is their enemy. And they also should know that which Syrian is a patriotic Syrian and which Syrian is trying to destroy them. And sometimes I question those who are still saying that the sanctions do not affect the Syrians, even if they are human or not. Even though the UN Special Rapporteur Alena Duhan, she went to Syria and she posted her report, her initial report about it, and I hosted her. But they smeared her. Now they say, "Oh, she's from Belarus." They say she's from Belarus. Like, look at the racism. Look at the racism. They say because she comes from Belarus, then she's biased. You know. So the amount of hypocrisy is a little bit unbearable.
But I think,
guys, before I end up,
sorry, go on.
Yeah, continue, Vanessa.
No, I just wanted to say, I think, as I said, if we have to look for positives out of this tragedy, I think what we're seeing are the real allies of Syria and humanity are coming together to help Syria now, and they are effectively challenging the sanctions to do so. That takes courage, but it also takes integrity. And I think what we're at the point of now is a very important transformation globally. I mean, we've been seeing it with the war in Ukraine, but now I think this tragedy is really showing which side people are on, and it's not on the side of Syria or on the side of any other country. It's on the side of humanity.
Exactly. Vanessa, thank you very much, really, for joining me today on Syriana Analysis. And I would like to mention one last thing, guys, about the crowdfunding. Lots of you are asking me. Many of you are not Syrians. Most of you are not Syrians. Most of you live outside of Syria. Most of you want to help, and you are asking me. And as I mentioned in the previous video, guys, the GoFundMe blocked my campaign, okay? We raised around 15,000 euros. It's blocked. But they gave us a very small window of chance to appeal. And they said, send us some information and proof that this is going for humanitarian aid in Syria. And I brought a document from Syria Today from a non-governmental organization that is whose work is humanitarian and relief work, okay? And they are underground in Aleppo, in Jablan, and other governorates trying to help the people underground. So I have a document that say that this funding goes to this organization. So I'm being very transparent with you. I will submit this document today. Now, when you watch, it will be already submitted because in 1 hour I will be at my friends and we will formulate the letter and the document, attach it, and we send. So when we send it, we will just wait for maybe a day or 2 or 3, I don't know, for the answer. If they say no, we block it forever, you will receive back your funds, okay? They will refund you. But if they do that, I have another idea. I'm trying to find a crowdfunding platform in Armenia which doesn't follow the sanctions on Syria, okay? So if you guys know something in Armenia, post it in the comments below. I would be very thankful. If not, I'm already asking some people in Armenia. But if they release the fund, guys, 15,000 euro, we will make it 30,000. We will make it 30,000. We will make it 30,000, and then we will send it to Syria, okay? And I will keep you posted. I will keep you posted tomorrow and after tomorrow, all the time. Please follow me on Twitter. I post it most of the time on Twitter for this case, also on Instagram and other Facebook, etc., because YouTube I can't just post a 30 seconds video and tell you what's happening. So follow me on these platforms as well, and also follow Vanessa. I put her Twitter account in the description below, and also her Telegram. She posts more on Telegram than Twitter. She's mad at Twitter, but rightfully so. rightfully so. And I will post her Twitter and her Telegram in the comments in the description. Please go and follow her. Okay, Vanessa, thank you so much, dear.
No, I thank
And
you.
kiss to your doggies.
Yeah, they're starting to make a noise. Like, it's time to get up.
I know. Yalla, 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 get out.
Yalla. Take
Let's see you,
care.
huh?
Bye bye.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.